The more multifamily brokers you can tell about your acquisition criteria, the more deals you're going to see. However, the way you convey that criteria to the broker can help you or hurt you. Let's go! The key to conveying your criteria for brokers is to be detailed enough where you aren't bombarded with emails that make no sense on the asset that was sent to you, but broad enough so that you see as many listings as possible. Most good brokers utilize a CRM or some sort of database that has your purchase criteria in it so that when they get a listing, they can send listings to the right buyers, not trashing up your inbox. That said, because good brokers have thousands of investors in their database, they can't read each individual record and any specific criteria that is specific to only you before firing off the email in a blast email. For instance, if you tell a broker your minimum unit count needs to be 100 plus units, but that you'd buy a 50 unit complex if it was near other assets that you own, then you're much better off just telling him that your minimum purchase is 50 units because they don't have the time to map all of your assets in relation to where it is to the new listing. Now, yes, that may mean you get some listings sent to you between 50 and 100 units that are nowhere near assets that you own, but that's a very small price to pay for seeing those listings and having to delete them rather than hearing about a 75 unit complex that closed right next door to one of your complexes. All I'm saying is keep your criteria broad enough so that you see as many deals as possible and you don't lose millions of dollars in opportunity just because you want to keep your inbox clean. Here are the 7 main categories you want to pass along to the multifamily broker on your criteria. Number 1, obviously unit count. Be broad. We just talked about one example on the low end, but let's say you can only personally afford up to 150 units, but if you partnered with a couple of other folks that you know and your buying power can be up to 250 units, you want to tell the broker your buying power is up to 250 units so he doesn't limit you when he gets listings. And of course, if you're a student housing person, you're going to be talking bed count and not necessarily unit count. Number 2, let the broker know what type of occupancy apartments you buy. Do you buy conventional housing, also known as market rate? Do you buy student housing? Do you buy affordable housing, which includes senior housing? If you've traditionally only bought conventional apartments, but in certain circumstances you'd buy a student housing deal, then say you'd buy student. Remember, your goal is to increase unit count, to buy more assets, and you can only buy more assets if you see more assets. Number 3 criteria. Are you open to buying partial ownerships within HOAs or condominium developments? Buying minority or majority ownerships in HOAs or condo developments are not as exciting to a lot of investors. However, they offer some of the best returns. Now, there are some drawbacks to it because you don't have control of how other owners take care of their assets, and the financing can be a little bit more difficult. Many investors have told me they'd consider purchasing those opportunities if there was a majority ownership of, say, 80% or more. If you're an investor that would consider a minority, majority, or 80 plus majority ownership in one of these assets, it's better to just say you'd be interested in any of these types of scenarios because there are many different examples in which an offering could be for a minority, but there's a storyline that exists where you could get the vast majority of the units. But if you were shut off to the idea altogether, you'll never see that listing in order to find out. Number 4, classifications. Class A, Class B plus, B, B minus, C plus, C, C minus. You want to be real careful here because classifications are sort of personal to whoever the person is that's judging that. A Class B to you might be a Class C to the broker and vice versa. If you only buy Class A assets, you may want to say that you buy A and B. If you think you only want to buy B assets, you may want to say B and C. Criteria number 5, age. This is another category you want to keep as broad as possible. If you think you only want to buy assets that are 1980 or newer, but there's a circumstance in which you would buy a 1965 asset that was updated and looking really nice, you're better off to just say there's no age limitations at all. Unless you're an extremely strict fund, or you're an investor who just has an extreme aversion to lead-based paint or galvanized piping or tar and gravel roofs, I would keep your age as broad as possible. Number 6, of the markets that broker covers, which ones will you not buy in no matter what? There are many investors I work with who have specific markets they absolutely will not buy in if you gave them the property for free. If you're one of those, it's important to pass that along to the broker. Otherwise, I would try to keep your markets as broad as possible. But you have to keep in mind that on average, only 8% of apartment complexes per year trade in a given market. So depending on the number of assets that are in the markets that you like, are there enough closings for you to go after based on the market share you believe you can capture? And number 7 criteria, do you develop? If you're open to buying multifamily land development sites, that's an easy one to tell the broker because it's just a yes or no checkbox on our listing blast. Remember, a broker's job is to get his or her seller the best price in the fastest time possible. Getting that listing to every possible buyer is the key to success for that broker. Your goal as the investor is to be on that list as often as possible by keeping your criteria broad enough where you see every listing that comes on the market. There's no worse feeling in this business for you as the investor when you hear of a closing that you could have had a shot at, but you didn't convey the criteria accurately to all the brokers. I hope this video brought you some value, and if so, please give me a subscribe if you aren't already, and make sure you hit the notification bell right next to it so you're made aware of the videos as they come available. See you on the next one.